in the silent heart of an alien forest, where even the winds dared not whisper, an experienced explorer stumbled upon the impossible. A wounded dragon thought extinct, her golden eyes filled not with fury, but with desperate trust. And hidden beneath her wing, two fragile hatchlings that could change the fate of two worlds forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video. And tell us, in the comments, where are you watching from? Now, let's jump into the story. The twin suns of Orion 9 hung low in the sky, casting their amber light through the crystalline canopy of the alien forest. The beams fractured as they touched the trees, filling the undergrowth with shifting patterns of color. It should have been alive with movement, the rustle of strange animals, the calls of birds engineered to thrive in this new world. But the silence was heavy, pressing in on every step Mason Hale took. For more than 20 years, Mason had tracked wildlife across countless worlds. He knew the rhythms of nature, the way each ecosystem revealed itself through sound, scent, and subtle vibration. Here, on Orion 9, he had grown used to the chorus of life. Today, that chorus was gone. The forest was still, as if it were holding its breath. Mason adjusted the scanner strapped to his wrist. The device should have been filled with signals of life, picking up heat patterns and electromagnetic traces of animals nearby. But the screen remained stubbornly blank. It was as though the entire region had been emptied. Frowning, he tapped the side of the scanner, thinking it might be malfunctioning. Still, nothing. He slowed his pace, instincts sharpened. Silence in a forest often meant danger. Predators could silence prey long before striking. His training told him to turn back, to avoid what he could not yet see. But curiosity drove him forward. Something was here, something powerful enough to change the readings of his equipment and silence the entire expanse. As Mason stepped into a wide clearing, the answer revealed itself. Standing less than 30 feet away was a creature thought lost to time. A dragon. Not the small, engineered creatures that colonists kept as pets, but a true native species. Immense, regal, alive. The dragon's body stretched nearly 40 feet from snout to tail. Its scales shimmered between shades of emerald and midnight blue, shifting as the sunlight struck at different angles. Each movement was slow, deliberate, heavy with exhaustion, yet there was nothing dull about its eyes. Golden, bright, and filled with intelligence. They locked on Mason with a purpose that froze him in place. His breath caught. He had read of them in ancient records, creatures believed extinct when terraforming altered the planet's atmosphere. The official story was simple. They had perished. But now, here it was, breathing, bleeding, alive. Mason's hand instinctively brushed against the plasma rifle slung across his back. He did not draw it. Something in the way the dragon held itself stopped him. It was not a predator's stance. It was wounded. Dark blood seeped from gashes along its side, thick and viscous. The marks were deep, as though made by the teeth of some larger beast. The dragon trembled faintly as it shifted weight, and a low rumble rose from its chest. Mason's pulse quickened. At first, he thought it was a growl, but no, the sound was different. Not a threat, but something closer to a plea. He took a cautious step forward. "You're hurt," he whispered, his voice catching in the empty air. The words sounded strange, spoken to a legend. The dragon did not lunge. Instead, it lowered its massive head, its eyes never leaving him. The silence pressed harder now, broken only by the faint hiss of his suit's servos adjusting to the planet's heavy gravity. Then Mason saw what he had missed. Beneath the great curve of the dragon's wing, Movement flickered. Two small forms shifted in the shadows. Hatchlings. They were no larger than house cats, with soft, iridescent scales that glowed faintly in the filtered light. Their eyes, wide and unblinking, watched him with a mix of fear and curiosity. The sight stole the breath from his chest. The mother dragon shifted, exposing them fully, as though revealing her secret. Mason understood then. This was no random encounter. She had brought him here, chosen him, trusted him. He muttered under his breath, hardly believing. "You found, out of all the people you could have met, you came to me." The dragon's golden eyes narrowed, almost in recognition. Her body sagged, trembling with weakness, yet she held herself firm enough to protect the young. Mason realized the truth. She was not here to fight or to flee. She was here because she needed help. The hatchlings pressed closer to their mother's side, chirping softly, their tiny voices fragile against the still forest. Mason's throat tightened. Everything in his training told him he should report this discovery. The scientific value alone would make him rich. But standing in that clearing, with the mother bleeding and her young clinging to her, the thought of turning them over to authorities felt like betrayal. Mason's heart pounded. He had stumbled into something greater than himself, something that could alter the future of both species. The dragon lowered her head further, her gaze locked on him. There was no mistaking the meaning. She was asking, not with words, but with trust so raw it cut through the silence. Mason took another step, slow and deliberate, his eyes fixed on hers. The hatchlings chirped again, their voices almost like questions. He exhaled, steadying his hands. The forest around him remained silent, waiting. And Mason understood that in this moment, a choice was being made. The hunter had found the last dragon family on Orion 9, and they were asking him for help. Mason Hale stood frozen in the clearing, the weight of the moment pressing on his chest. Before him, the wounded dragon lay trembling, her golden eyes locked on his. Beneath her wing, the hatchlings shifted again, their small bodies pressing close to the warmth of their mother. The message was clear. She was offering them to him, trusting a human with what was most precious. His instincts battled with reason. Protocol demanded that he contact the settlement authority. The discovery of living dragons would reshape everything on Orion 9. The scientific community would celebrate, the government would descend, and the dragons would be surrounded, studied, and likely imprisoned. But looking at the mother's injuries, the fear in the hatchling's eyes, Mason knew that calling it in now would be their doom. He took a slow step forward, kneeling down in the shimmering grass. "It's all right," he whispered, his voice steady though his hands trembled. "I'll take care of them." The dragon lowered her head, nudging the hatchlings gently toward him. They hesitated, chirping softly, before stumbling into the open. One was brighter in color, scales glimmering with silver and faint gold. The other was darker, hues of shadow and dusk rippling across its skin. They looked fragile, almost delicate, yet their eyes carried intelligence that startled him. Mason reached into his pack and pulled out an emergency sling made from tough survival fabric. Carefully, he unfolded it and set it on the ground. The hatchlings sniffed at it, their tiny claws brushing the surface. They did not resist when he gently scooped them into the carrier. Their bodies were warm through his gloves, their small hearts beating rapidly. He glanced back at the mother. "I promise," he said softly, "I'll bring them back." The dragon closed her eyes briefly, as if in relief, before laying her head down on the crystalline grass. Mason knew he could not waste time. She needed help, but moving her was impossible. The hatchlings, however, were small enough. If he could get them to someone who understood alien biology, perhaps there was still hope. He began the trek back toward the settlement, the sling secured against his chest. The forest remained unnaturally silent, the air thick with tension. Mason's scanner flickered with faint readings now, suggesting movement far off in the trees. Predators were nearby, watching. The hatchlings chirped softly, their small heads poking from the sling. Mason found himself speaking to them, his voice low and reassuring. "Don't worry, little ones. I know someone who can help. Dr. Lena Rosk. She's a xenobiologist, the best I know. If anyone can save your mother, it's her." The brighter hatchling, whom Mason began to think of as Solis, tilted its head and trilled, almost as if it understood. The darker one, Dusk, remained quiet, its eyes fixed on him with steady curiosity. Shadow shifted along the edges of the path. Mason tightened his grip on his rifle. Though he did not draw it, the predators that had attacked the dragon could still be close. Every instinct told him he was being watched. When he finally broke through the edge of the forest, the settlement of New Cascade came into view. The prefabricated buildings reflected the fading light of the suns, their sharp lines a stark contrast to the wild beauty of the forest. Mason moved quickly through the gates, ignoring the curious glances from workers finishing their shifts. He did not stop until he reached a low structure on the settlement's edge, the laboratory of Dr. Lena Rosk. Inside, the air smelled faintly of antiseptic and ionized equipment. Lena, her hair tied back and eyes sharp with focus, looked up from her workstation as Mason entered. Her gaze fell to the sling, and her expression froze. "Mason," she said slowly, "what have you done?" He set the sling gently on a table. The hatchlings climbed out, their scales catching the sterile light. They chirped, exploring the surface with quick steps. Lena's hand rose to her mouth. "Dragons," she whispered. "Living dragons. This can't be." "They're real," Mason interrupted. "Their mother is dying in the forest. She brought them to me. I need your help to save her." Lena circled the table, her eyes wide with awe. She extended a careful hand, and Solis sniffed at her fingers before chirping in approval. Dusk stayed close to Mason, watching silently. "Do you understand what this means? The species isn't extinct. They've been alive all this time. We have to report this immediately." Mason shook his head. "Not yet. If we tell the authority, they'll send soldiers, scientists, anyone who wants to claim them. Their mother trusted me, trusted us. We can't turn this into an experiment, not until she's safe." Lena studied him for a long moment. She saw the urgency in his eyes, the way he stood protectively near the hatchlings. Finally, she nodded. "All right, tell me what happened." Mason recounted the encounter, the silence of the forest, the dragon's wounds, the hatchlings revealed beneath her wing. Lena listened intently, her expression shifting between amazement and concern. When he finished, she was already gathering medical supplies. "The wounds sound severe," she said. "If they were caused by predators, she could be bleeding internally. I'll need nanogel, antibiotics, and the hover sled. But Mason, she's enormous. Treating her won't be easy." "Then we'll make it work," he replied firmly. "She trusted me. I won't let her down." Lena looked again at the hatchlings. Solis trilled, climbing onto a small console, while Dusk pressed closer to Mason's side. "They're calm," she murmured, "almost like they understand everything." Mason nodded. "They do. I can feel it. They're not just animals, Lena. They're something more." The weight of the choice hung heavy in the room. The easy path would have been to report them, to step back and let the system handle it. But Mason knew the system. It would smother the dragons in cages and call it science. This path was harder, riskier, but it was the only one that honored the trust he had been given. As the twin suns dipped toward the horizon, Mason and Lena loaded the sled with supplies. The hatchlings chirped anxiously, sensing the urgency. The journey ahead would be dangerous, but the choice had been made. Mason would protect the dragons, no matter the cost. The hoversled hummed softly as it carried Mason Hale, Dr. Lena Rosk, and the hatchlings back toward the crystalline forest. Night was falling on Orion 9, and the twin suns dipped behind the horizon, leaving the canopy glowing faintly with its natural luminescence. Mason held the sling close, the hatchlings restless inside, chirping as though they sensed their mother suffering from miles away. The forest grew darker, filled with shadows that shifted between the shimmering trees. Every sound seemed amplified, the crunch of boots on alien soil, the distant cry of unseen predators. Lena drove the sled with careful precision, her eyes flicking constantly between the path ahead and the glowing readings on her tablet. "If she's still alive, we have to move fast," Lena said, her voice tight with urgency. "Dragons this size can bleed out quickly, and if her wounds were caused by predators with anticoagulant saliva, she's losing more blood than we realize." Mason nodded but kept silent. His thoughts were fixed on the clearing where he had left the dragon. When they finally arrived, his breath caught. She was still there, collapsed but breathing, her great chest rising and falling with labored effort. When she saw them approach, her golden eyes flickered with recognition. The hatchwings squirmed and chirped loudly, wriggling free of the sling. They scrambled toward their mother, their small bodies glowing faintly under the crystalline light. The dragon raised her head weakly, releasing a deep rumble that sounded like joy mixed with relief. "She's alive," Mason whispered. "She held on for them." Lena wasted no time. She grabbed her medical kit and approached cautiously, speaking in calm tones. "Easy, big girl. I'm here to help." The dragon's gaze locked on Lena, then shifted back to Mason, as if seeking reassurance. Mason knelt beside her massive head. "She's with me," he said softly. "You can trust her." Slowly, the dragon lowered her head back to the ground. Lena knelt at her side, examining the wounds with quick, professional eyes. "Deep lacerations," she muttered. "Teeth marks. Predators of significant size. These wounds are infected already. We'll need nanogel to stabilize her." She pulled out a vial of shimmering blue-green liquid and attached it to a spray applicator. As she worked, Mason stayed by the dragon's head, speaking gently while the hatchlings pressed close to her. "Hold on," he whispered. "They still need you." The medical gel hissed as Lena applied it. The wounds began to seal slowly, the gel creating a protective barrier while accelerating cellular regeneration. The dragon shuddered but did not resist. Instead, her eyes remained fixed on Mason with an intensity that seemed almost human. Over the next hours, they worked tirelessly. Lena cleaned each wound, applied treatment, and administered a synthesized antibiotic designed for large alien physiology. The dragon endured it all in silence, her eyes flickering only when the hatchlings chirped in distress. As the night deepened, Mason and Lena set up a temporary shelter at the edge of the clearing. The hover sled was parked nearby, its lights dimmed to avoid startling the mother. The hatchlings settled between their mother's wings, but their curiosity soon drew them toward the humans. Solace, the brighter of the two, climbed onto Mason's knee, chirping as if asking questions. Dusk, quieter and more observant, wandered toward Lena's medical tools, watching her movements carefully. "They're not just reacting," Lena whispered. "They're studying us." Mason nodded. "They understand more than we realize." Days passed in cautious rhythm. Lena checked the dragon's wounds twice a day, each time finding them healing faster than expected. The hatchlings grew bolder, exploring the camp, mimicking gestures, and responding to tones of voice. Mason often found himself speaking to them as if they were children, describing the settlement, the forest, even the stars. Solace would trill responses, while Dusk watched with steady, intelligent eyes. On the second day, Lena called Mason over to the dragon's side. "Look at this," she whispered. Etched into the crystalline soil were patterns. Not random scratches, but deliberate symbols, repeating shapes, variations in structure. Mason stared in disbelief. "She's writing, or something very close to it," Lena replied. "This isn't animal behavior. This is language." Mason's chest tightened as he realized the truth. They're not just survivors. They're a civilization, a sapient species forced into hiding. The weight of it pressed heavily on both of them. Humanity had believed Orion 9 was empty, a world reshaped for colonization. But the dragons had been here all along, adapting, surviving, concealing themselves from the intruders who had claimed their world. That EV, as the forest glowed with bioluminescent light, Mason sat by the dragon's head. Her eyes were open, steady, filled with intelligence that could no longer be denied. He spoke softly, though he wasn't sure why. "We thought we ended your kind, but you survived. You've been watching us all this time, haven't you?" The dragon blinked slowly, and for an instant, he swore there was understanding. The hatchlings chirped beside him. Solus tugged at his sleeve, then pointed with a tiny claw toward the etched symbols. Dusk pressed its head gently against his hand, a gesture so trusting that Mason's throat tightened. "They're asking us to learn," Lena said quietly. "To see them not as beasts, but as people." Mason stared at the hatchlings, then at their mother. He understood the enormity of it. This was not a discovery to be cataloged and forgotten. This was the beginning of something far greater, a chance to bridge the divide between species. But with that chance came danger. If others found out too soon, fear and greed would destroy everything. As dawn broke on the third day, the dragon stirred. Her massive body shifted, strength returning. She raised her head high, scars now pink against her shimmering scales. She looked at Mason and Lena, then bowed, lowering her head in a gesture of deliberate meaning. Mason's heart pounded. It was not just gratitude. It was acknowledgement. Recognition of trust returned, and in that moment, he knew the truth. Humanity had not discovered a dragon. A dragon had chosen to reveal herself. 3 days after the mother dragon's wounds had closed, she rose with renewed strength. Her scales caught the morning light, glimmering between emerald and deep blue. Mason Hale and Dr. Lena Rosk stood at the edge of the clearing, watching in awe. They had seen her near death, had tended her wounds, and now she stood as a towering presence once again. The hatchlings, Solus and Dusk, chirped excitedly, running circles around her legs. She lowered her massive head and nuzzled them, the sound of her breath rolling like distant thunder. Then, to Mason's surprise, she turned toward him and Lena. Slowly, deliberately, she nudged the hatchlings forward with her snout. Mason froze. "She's leaving them with us," he whispered. Lena's eyes widened. "No, she's choosing us. She wants them to stay." The dragon rumbled, a sound that vibrated through the ground. Her golden eyes locked on Mason's, steady and knowing. He realized it was no accident. She was not abandoning them. She was appointing them, giving her young to humans as a gesture of trust. Over the following weeks, Solus and Dusk grew rapidly. Their scales hardened, their wings strengthened, and their intelligence became undeniable. Solus delighted in exploring technology, often activating datapads and imitating human gestures. Dusk, quieter, studied puzzles and found solutions no one had expected. Soon, their communication advanced beyond chirps. With a modified console designed by Lena, the hatchlings began typing crude words. The first time Solis tapped out the phrase, "Learn fast," Mason nearly dropped the device. From that moment, everything changed. Within days, they were forming sentences. Within weeks, they were expressing thoughts. One evening, Solis typed, "Mothers say learn. Many dragon hide. Must talk human. Must find way live together." Mason and Lena exchanged stunned looks. The mother dragon had not just entrusted her children for protection. She had given them as ambassadors. The revelation spread between them in silence. This was no accident of survival. It was diplomacy. Not long after, the mother dragon returned, but she was not alone. With her came two others, one crimson-scaled, his body radiating aggression, and another dark purple, calm but cautious. They towered at the edge of the clearing, their presence both magnificent and terrifying. The hatchlings rushed to greet their mother, chirping loudly, but dragons exchanged deep vocalizations, the sounds layered and complex. Solis scrambled back to the console, claws tapping furiously to translate. The words appeared on the screen. "Thank you for caring for my children. They have learned much. Now, we must talk about the future." Mason felt his chest tighten. "You can understand us?" the mother dragon rumbled. Solis translated again. "We have always understood. We learned your language by listening. We chose silence until ready." The crimson dragon stepped forward, its voice harsh and sharp. The translation appeared. "Humans are a disease. We must drive you away before it is too late." The purple dragon followed, its voice lower, steadier. Translation: "Fighting will destroy both peoples. We must find balance." Mason glanced at Lena. The clearing trembled under the weight of this moment. Then the mother, her tone steady, her eyes fixed on Mason. Solis typed furiously, "My children are proof we can learn from each other. Humans have knowledge we need. Dragons have wisdom humans need. Apart, we fight. Together, we build. Not alliance, partnership, equals." Mason swallowed hard. She's offering peace. Lena's gaze was fierce. More than peace. She's offering a future. But the danger was clear. There would be humans who would see the dragons as threats, or worse, as resources. And among dragons, some already wanted war. They could not reveal this discovery to the wider world yet. They needed time, a foundation built on trust. A decision was made to approach only one leader, Administrator Karina Voss, who had governed New Cascade for years with a balance of strength and pragmatism. The meeting was tense. Karina sat in the largest chamber of the settlement, her eyes wide as the dragons crowded the entrance, their massive bodies straining against the walls. "If word of this reaches Earth too soon," Karina said carefully, "they will send military ships. They will either try to control the dragons or destroy them. Neither outcome will save this world." The mother dragon rumbled, her voice echoing like thunder. Solis translated, "Then we keep it quiet. Start small. Build trust. Prove it can work. For our children, for all children." Karina studied the hatchlings, then the humans, then the mother. At last, she nodded slowly. "We try." The words settled in Mason's chest, like fire and hope combined. As the dragons disappeared into the forest, Mason realized their world had changed forever. They were no longer just explorers or settlers. They were caretakers of a fragile trust, guardians of a partnership that could shape the destiny of two species. And with the hatchlings beside them, the future of Orion 9 had found its ambassadors.